So we're recording at Kim Lincoln's home, and we're talking about the Latif and the history of it, and the Terrain of Essence, which is her website, and how she explains what she does. So we were speaking about the chasm, and now we're going to be talking about what is splitting? What does splitting mean, and how is that helpful to understand what that means? How would that be helpful or beneficial to a person?
Okay. Well, I would say in the simplest way.
I forgot to. What is splitting? That's what we're talking about now.
I would say in the simplest way, splitting is anywhere we reject, deny, or hide part of, truth. And how do we do that? The most common way we do that is judgment. Not judgment as discernment, meaning criticism, meaning admonishment, right?
Mm-hmm. Admonishing ourselves and others, or?
Yeah. And criticizing ourselves and others,
Mm-hmm.
We're not including everything.
Mm.
And that's devoid of compassion. That's a very mental place, right?
It's a mental place.
Right. And so we've just cut off from our whole self, which is heart, something, and rejected it.
Mm-hmm. So the heart is very important.
Yes. And we're not talking about the physical muscle.
No.
Maintained in the chest. We're talking about whole heart. And whole heart includes all three centers, the mental, the emotional, and the instinctual. And so splitting, anywhere we go into judgment, we're going to create some kind of defense that will feel in a sensory way, sensate in the body. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need to include the separation we've created through our thought and visit that wherever that's in our body as sensation.
Okay.
And include that.
All right.
And that's usually very uncomfortable because that's a defense. And so judgment is actually what we cut off from ourselves and don't allow ourselves to have and project it out onto another.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not willing to have that energy.
Okay.
So in this work, we're constantly working with the law of opposites. Right?
Okay.
So we have to include what we don't allow ourselves to have.
That we see in other people.
Yeah.
As a condemnation, a criticism.
Right.
A judgment.
Right. So for example, if jealousy, right?
Okay.
So if I see a couple that is very in love and I'm feeling a kind of envy, right?
Right.
So what does that do? That constricts around the heart. And there's a mental judgment, like something not okay about that, or it brings up hurt because I wish I had that, right?
Yes.
And so the mind can go into making up stories and judging them about something. So I don't allow myself to feel the hurt for not allowing myself to have that full, passionate embrace of self.
Is that self-hatred?
Yes, when we drop all the way down,
Yeah.
yes, it will eventually bring us to our own self-hate. It's deep work.
It's very deep work.
Yes. First we catch the split. I just had an emotion that about something outside of me,
Mm-hmm.
where I don't allow me to have me in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm splitting it off and projecting it out, and then criticizing it or going into some kind of story about it, whatever that is.
Making some story up that I think I see in them,
Yes,
but it's really about me.
it's all about
The
Me.
person, yeah,
right.
bringing it back in. And then how can a person be with that so that they can experience the fullness of themselves without splitting off when they see that love out there? How can we bring that inward?
That's going to expose the core wounding about that love.
The core wounding.
Yeah, that's going to open us, right,
Mm-hmm.
up to the wound. It's also, like you said earlier, may open us up to our own self-hate, devaluing ourselves. I'm not worthy of love,
Oh, that's painful.
right? It may expose when we pause, again, at that chasm or in the wound.
Mm-hmm.
It may expose all kinds of stuff.
Now, when you say exposed, would it be something, a thought that comes up, or a memory?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Any of that can be a thought, a memory, a sensation, feeling.
okay.
So we welcome whatever that is.
And it could be anything.
Anything.
Could it be a repressed memory, do you think?
Oh, yes. Oftentimes, instant reactions are unconscious memories.
Oh, really? And we don't make that connection?
Not at all. It's unconscious. We're not even conscious that it's something to do with the past.
Oh, okay.
We make it all about now. It has so little to do with now. What it has to do with now is showing us where we're not attending,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. So then when we drop through the form to feel these things that are unconscious bubbling up ever so subtly or not so subtly, is it something that each of us can do on our own, or is it better to do with someone as a witness there with us? What is your understanding?
The more advanced student will be able to do it on their own. It's still good to have a teacher because there's a tricky edge, but really highly recommended somebody have a teacher, a witness.
Mm-hmm.
And really that teacher needs to be someone who's gone the path before, that has come through all of this, that has full understanding. These are really tricky edges.
Tricky edges.
Very tricky edges.
Could a person get pulled under and get caught up in that?
Absolutely. And become identified with it. And think they're free, but they're actually in pattern.
They're in the pattern.
Yes.
And what does that mean? They're in that pattern. They're in the pattern of judging or
They may come through to an essential experience, but the ego may use it in a grandiose way.
oh, so subtle.
So subtle. And that's how we can use the work against ourselves to keep from growing, to keep from really going through the heart of vulnerability.
And so what would the ego say to pull us into this trickery, this self-deception?
I mean, we may presence through the chasm and come through and have a light-filled experience. But now the ego is using that experience as an exaltation of itself.
Oh, I figured, it's like, I figured that out.
Exactly.
Oh,
Now I've got it.
Oh,
Now I've got it. The minute we say, oh, I've got it.
No.
Oh, boy. Know that we don't, because that's the ego speaking. The I, which is free, doesn't identify itself.
And so
There's a knowing.
there's a knowing.
And it's a freedom. We're talking about the stages of gnosis here.
Gnosis, stages of gnosis, which means wisdom?
Yes, really coming through to the knowing that knows. At first, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come to a place where we know we don't know.
Okay.
And then we arrive to the place that we begin to know. And then it's beyond that, we're free.
And we don't even need to talk about it, that we know anything.
Exactly.
We're resonating in a wholeness right inside of our heart, and
that's the unified place. And that's no words. It's speechless.
oh, that's so beautiful.
There's not a lot to talk about here.
Right.
Being. Just being.
Is that when I have a Buddhist teacher and he talks about going beyond,
Yes.
beyond?
Yes.
Is that it, you think?
Yes. I mean, in many ways, there's the agape, the gate going beyond, right?
Yes.
The ultimate freedom. It's speechless. The energy is so deep in and so expanded simultaneously. It's wordless. It's like pre-thought.
Pre-thought. Is this essence, Kim?
I mean, this is an immense state of consciousness.
Immense.
Essence, we're coming in closer. Essence is the place between the mind and the body. It's the personal relationship in each one of us between that God spark within us and the pattern living in the mind and the body.
Oh.
When we come in close to that in between, yes, eventually it opens us to this gate. But first, we need to be here on Earth.
Okay. Yes. We
Right.
need to be here on Earth.
We need to be so fully in our Earth, inhabit the earth of the body on this earth.
Excellent.
As the divine self. It's a very embodied experience.
Thank you for that distinction.
Yes.
It's helpful.
And what the ego wants, it wants to go to this beyond place. But it doesn't at the same time. Like we want it and we don't want it.
Because the ego will die?
It perceives itself as dying because it's washed clear.
It's washed clear.
Yeah.
And what is that stage where I've heard you talk about ego falls in love with essence?
Yeah. That's like the saffron, you know? It's like this place of the Sacred Heart.
When you say saffron, the saffron-colored latifa?
Mm-hmm. And that's, Faisal and Hamid so beautifully described that place as the Mobius. That was really their terminology, the Mobius. It's this place between the will center and the heart, right? At the tip of the sternum. And it's that knot, right? And it's the place of, abundance.
Oh, it's
The giving is receiving and the receiving is giving, right? But it's that place coming into the Sacred Heart that frees us to the illuminated self, to who we really are, the I amness, the light we are.
Beautiful.
We're covering a lot of territory here.
Great. Let's stop for a moment then. Shall we? Yeah.
Yeah, that's getting like way advanced.